Welcome to my channel. Let me ask you something. Have you been studying English for years, but still can't speak fluently? You're not alone. Most learners make the same mistake. But one day, I discovered a simple trick. No grammar books, no long vocabulary lists, just one thing, and my fluency exploded. Comment: I want this trick if you're tired of studying and want real English fluency. Stay with me, because in this video, I'll show you how I became fluent without studying. Chapter 1: The Frustration of Studying Without Speaking. He sat at his desk again, like every evening. Another English book opened. Another notebook filled with grammar exercises. Rules about present perfect, past continuous conditionals. All underlined in red. He had memorized hundreds of vocabulary words, made flashcards, and listened to hours of English podcasts. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. Because even after all this effort, he still couldn't speak. Not even one full sentence without stopping. Not without panic. Not without thinking too hard. Then came the moment that changed everything. He was in a shop. A lady looked at him kindly and asked, "Can I help you?" A simple question. Easy words. He knew all of them. But still, his mouth stayed closed, his mind froze. The words he had studied for months disappeared. All that came out was silence. He smiled awkwardly, turned around, and left the shop. Embarrassed, angry, confused. As he walked home, one sentence repeated in his head. I studied for 2 years. And still couldn't say I need help in real life. And that's when the pain really hit. He thought, why do I know the rules, but I can't speak? Why do I understand English, but my mouth doesn't move? What's wrong with me? The truth is, nothing was wrong with him. This is exactly what millions of English learners around the world feel every day. They've been told to study grammar, memorize lists, and pass tests. But no one told them the real secret to fluency. They start to believe it's their fault. That maybe they're not smart enough. That maybe English is too hard for them. But it's not true. The method is broken, not the learner. This chapter connects deeply with so many viewers because almost every beginner watching this video has experienced the same frustration, the silent freeze, the dry mouth, the racing heart, the feeling of failure, and more than that, the feeling of being alone. But now, for the first time, they're hearing their story spoken aloud, and that makes them feel seen, understood, not judged. They stay watching because they want the solution. They want to know how this learner, someone just like them, finally escaped this endless cycle of study and silence. They feel the pain, and now they crave the breakthrough. Chapter 2: The Accidental Discovery. It happened on a normal afternoon. He wasn't looking for answers. He wasn't studying English. He was just sitting in a park, watching people walk by, thinking about giving up. Maybe English just wasn't for him. Maybe he'd always be the person who understands a little, but never speaks. But then he heard it. A voice. Someone nearby was speaking English. A foreign tourist talking to a fruit seller. The learner leaned in and listened. not the words, but the way the tourist spoke. Simple, natural, not perfect, but free. It was like the words came from inside, not from a textbook. And that's when something clicked. The learner thought, wait, this man isn't using fancy grammar. He's not saying every word perfectly, but he's speaking, he's communicating, and people understand him. That moment hit like lightning. Maybe fluency wasn't about knowing everything. Maybe it was about letting go, about speaking without fear, without waiting to be perfect. For the first time, the learner questioned everything he'd been taught. All those years of focusing on grammar, maybe they were holding him back. He went home and opened YouTube, not to search for grammar lessons, but to search for real people speaking real English. He found a video of someone walking through a city talking about their day. The title said, "English Listening Practice, Walk with Me." He played it, and again, something felt different. The speaker was just talking, describing, laughing, saying things like, "I'm walking to the store. It's a bit cold today. Look at that dog." No complicated phrases, no grammar explanations, just real speech. That's when the learner made the choice. He would stop studying and start observing. He would listen like a child, watch the lips, feel the rhythm, and something deep inside him whispered, "Maybe this is how I will really learn." For the first time, he felt hope, not because he had found a new rule, but because he had seen real English in action. It was alive, and he wanted to live in it. This moment is powerful for every viewer watching. They see themselves in this learner. They know that feeling of doubt, that moment of almost quitting. But now they're starting to believe, maybe there's another way. Maybe I can learn differently. The emotional spike is real, because it's not a lesson. It's a discovery. And the viewer doesn't want to miss what comes next. Chapter 3. The Shadowing Secret. He was alone in his room when it happened. The curtains were closed, the lights were dim. His phone sat quietly in his hand, and his heart was full of questions. But then he remembered that video, the one where someone had said, "Repeat after me. Don't think. Just copy my voice." At first, it sounded strange, childish, too simple to be true. But something inside told him to try. So he opened the video again. He wore his earphones. He listened, and this time, he didn't just watch. He spoke. The speaker in the video said, "I'm going to the market." He repeated, "I'm going to the market." The speaker said, "It's a sunny day." He echoed, "It's a sunny day." He didn't pause to understand the grammar. He didn't stop to translate. He just repeated, like a shadow, like an actor learning lines, like a baby copying its parents. At first, he felt awkward. He laughed at himself. His voice sounded strange. He made mistakes. But still, he kept going. One sentence, then another. And then something unbelievable happened. The next day, while walking to a small grocery shop, he looked up at the sun and softly whispered to himself, "It's a sunny day." Wait, where did that come from? He didn't translate. He didn't plan. The words just came. That's when he understood the power of shadowing. It wasn't just about speaking. It was about training the brain. By copying real English, his brain stopped translating. It started thinking in English. Slowly, sentence by sentence, the gap between his thoughts and his speech began to disappear. He wasn't memorizing. He was becoming fluent. He repeated the shadowing exercise again that night, but this time with a smile. He began to choose short, simple videos with native speakers. He paused. He replayed. He matched the tone, the pause, the rhythm. His voice became stronger. His confidence grew. He was not just a student anymore. He was a speaker. And the most powerful part? He didn't study any rules. Not even one. No verb charts, no grammar guides, just repetition. Pure, fearless repetition. Like a child, like a song stuck in your head. And slowly, English started to live inside him. Viewers watching this feel something new, possibility. They realize they don't need perfect understanding to speak. They don't need permission. All they need is a voice, and a few minutes each day. When the learner says his first full sentence, naturally, fluently, without effort, and the viewer whispers, "I want that." Chapter 4. From Listener to Speaker in 7 days. The first day was strange. The second day was hard. But by the third day, something had started to change. He had made a promise to himself. Just 10 minutes of shadowing every morning. No excuses, no skipping. He would not worry about understanding every word. He would not pause to think. He would just listen and repeat. That's all, like a voice echoing through a hallway. And so he began. On day 1, his tongue stumbled. He paused often. His voice was soft, unsure. But he finished the 10 minutes. He repeated sentences like, "I'm making breakfast. Let's go for a walk, and what time is it?" He didn't study them. He just said them, again and again. On day 2, the same sentences came back. But this time they felt easier, smoother. His mouth moved faster. The pauses were shorter. His brain didn't scream with translation. It started to feel the language. By day 3, something magical happened. He walked to the mirror, looked into his eyes, and said, "I'm tired today, but let's keep going." He hadn't planned that sentence. It just came out. From nowhere. From inside. That's when he realized, I'm not just listening anymore. I'm speaking. I'm becoming the voice I've been copying. Day 4, day 5. He kept going. Same time. Same routine. The sentences grew longer. His voice became stronger. He even began to use some expressions from the videos in real conversations. Once, while talking to a shopkeeper, he said, "I'm just looking around, thank you." The words slipped out easily. The shopkeeper nodded, smiled. That small success felt bigger than any grammar test he had ever passed. By day 7, he was no longer just practicing English. He was living it. The morning shadowing became his favorite time of day. A ritual, a habit, like brushing teeth, like drinking tea. It didn't feel like study. It felt like connection. The sound of English started to feel like home, like his own voice. And here's what he learned. Fluency is not about knowing. It's about doing. Not about perfection, but repetition. Again and again. Even if it feels boring, even if it feels slow. Because the brain learns through rhythm, through sound, through daily touch, not through rules on paper. Viewers feel a deep motivation here. They imagine their own 7-day journey. They begin to ask themselves, can I try this? Just 10 minutes a day? When the learner says, I wasn't studying anymore, I was becoming fluent, that moment feels like freedom. A door opening. Chapter 5. Talking to myself in English. It began as a joke. He stood in front of the mirror one morning, tired, his hair messy, his eyes still sleepy. He smiled at his own reflection and whispered, "You look sleepy." Then he laughed. It felt silly, but also real. And that one line opened a new world, because that day he didn't just shadow someone else's voice. He started talking to himself in English, out loud, and for the first time he wasn't just repeating. He was creating, responding, conversing with himself. Every morning, he made it a habit. He would walk up to the mirror and begin, "How are you today? You look tired. What's the plan for today?" At first, he used simple lines, phrases he had shadowed, but slowly, new sentences started to appear. His brain was now building them on its own, without rules, without translation. They weren't perfect, but they were his. That made all the difference. On the third day of this new habit, something powerful happened. He said, "You can do it." And as he looked into his own eyes, he felt those words deeply. Not just as English practice, but as truth. He was encouraging himself. He was building confidence, not only in English, but in life. Speaking to himself became a daily ritual, a time of courage, a time of honesty, a time of transformation. He didn't need a teacher. He didn't need a partner. He didn't need a classroom. The mirror became his first listener, his first audience, his first friend in English. And through this strange, personal conversation, he began to discover fluency in a new way, not through rules, but through connection, not through pressure, but through reflection. At the end of the week, he noticed something remarkable. He had stopped translating in his head. English thoughts began to rise on their own. Sentences appeared like waves, soft, natural, unforced. "Let's eat something." "I'll go for a walk." "Today is a good day." These were no longer borrowed phrases. They were part of him. And perhaps the most beautiful thing, he no longer feared mistakes, because the mirror never judged, the mirror never corrected, the mirror just listened, patiently, kindly. That freedom gave him space to try, and trying gave him strength to grow. Viewers watching this feel a deep emotional pull. They imagine themselves in front of their mirror, whispering, smiling, feeling their own voice take shape. And they begin to believe, maybe I don't need a perfect environment. Maybe I can start right here, with me. When the learner says, I stopped waiting for the world to talk to me. I started talking to myself, and that changed everything. Chapter 6: The Power of Emotional Words. It was a rainy evening. He sat by the window, sipping tea, phone in hand, and clicked on a video titled, "The Boy Who Missed His Mother." The story was simple, in slow English. But as he listened, something shifted. The boy in the story cried. The mother whispered, "I'll always love you." And suddenly, the learner felt something. He didn't just understand the words, he felt them. That moment opened a new door, because now English was not just a language, it was emotion, and emotion made it unforgettable. That night, he realized something strange. He couldn't remember the 20 new words he had memorized from his vocabulary notebook last week. But he remembered the word miss from the story. I miss you. 3 small words, but full of feeling, full of meaning. He remembered lonely. He remembered hug. He remembered safe. And he didn't just remember the words, he remembered the feeling behind them. He began searching for more stories, real ones, sad ones, happy ones, romantic ones, stories about fear, love, dreams, hope. He didn't need a dictionary anymore. He listened, he cried, he laughed. And with every emotion, a new word stayed in his heart, not just his head. He started writing these words in a special notebook, not as a list, but with the emotion attached, like cold from a story about a homeless man, brave from a story about a girl who spoke up in class, alone from a story of a mother waiting for her son. That's when he discovered the truth. Emotion is memory. When you feel something, your brain makes a deeper connection. It doesn't forget. Because it's not just language anymore. It's life. He wasn't memorizing vocabulary now. He was experiencing it. And it made him more fluent, more natural, more real. One day he watched a love story in English. A line stayed with him. She waited, but he never came. That night, he used it in the mirror. I waited, but you didn't come. His voice cracked. It wasn't just practice. It was healing. The language had touched something deep. And the biggest surprise? He could now use these words in real situations, easily, without thinking, without translation, because they weren't just English words. They were part of his emotions, part of his story. He realized that boring word lists had no soul, but emotional stories, they had fire, and fire stays. Viewers watching this feel it too. They remember their own favorite stories, the ones that moved them, the ones they never forgot, and now they understand why. The emotional spike hits when the learner says, I didn't study these words, I lived them. That line becomes a turning point, a new way to remember English, a new way to feel connected. Chapter 7: No rules, just repetition. By now, he had given up the old way. No more grammar books. No more sitting at a desk trying to understand why the past perfect is used in one sentence and not the other. He no longer cared about getting the rules right. What he cared about now was rhythm, repetition, real words, real feelings, real use. Every morning, he shadowed a video. Every evening, he talked to himself in the mirror. And in between, he repeated sentences in his head. On the street, in the kitchen, while walking to the shop. It wasn't studying, it was living with English. He didn't say, "I must remember this grammar point." He said, "I'll just say it again." The same line, 5 times, 10 times. "What time is it? How was your day? Can I help you?" These became his daily food, not theory, just practical speech. He repeated because it felt natural, because it felt good, and slowly, the fear disappeared. The hesitation faded. He no longer worried about being correct. He only cared about being clear, being confident, being heard. He remembered a time when he had tried to learn conditionals. "If I had known, I would have gone." And he felt lost. But now, he didn't learn the rule. He just remembered a sentence from a story. "If I had seen her, I would have stopped her." He didn't analyze it. He just repeated it. Again and again. Until one day, he used it in real life. And it felt right. It came out like breathing. He learned a new word. He used it 10 times that day. He heard a new phrase. He spoke it into the mirror. He didn't care if it sounded strange. He didn't care if someone laughed. Because now he had discovered the real trick. Fluency isn't about knowing more. It's about using what you already know, again and again. One day a friend asked, "How did you improve so fast?" He smiled and replied, "I didn't study. I just repeated." That answer confused many people, but for him, it was the truth. Repetition changed his life. It made English automatic, like a song stuck in your head, like a rhythm you can't forget. And it didn't take years. It just took consistency, small actions, every day. And most of all, it took courage. The courage to let go of perfection, to be okay with mistakes, to love the process, not just the progress. Because when you stop trying to be perfect, you start becoming fluent. For viewers, this chapter is both a relief and a revelation. They've been carrying the heavy weight of grammar for too long, but now they hear, you don't need to understand everything. You just need to say it, again and again. The emotional spike happens when the learner says, "My fluency didn't come from rules, it came from rhythm." That line stays in their mind. It becomes a mantra. Chapter 8. Real English in Real Life. He never imagined that buying bananas could feel like a victory. But that morning, standing in front of the fruit seller, he smiled and said, "How much for these?" The words came without fear. Simple, director, natural. The seller answered, and he understood. Not every word, but enough. He paid, said thank you, and walked away with a bag of fruit and a heart full of pride. Because for the first time, he had used English in the real world. Not in a classroom, not in his mirror, in life, and it worked. That small conversation gave him something grammar books never did: confidence. He wasn't fluent like a native speaker. He wasn't perfect, but he didn't need to be. He had crossed the line between learner and speaker. He had entered a new world, the world of real English. From that day on, he looked for small chances to use English. Ordering tea, asking for directions, saying good morning to a foreign visitor. These tiny moments became gold. They built him up, one sentence at a time. And something else changed too. He stopped being afraid of people. Before, he worried, what if they laugh at my English? What if I make a mistake? But now he knew, people don't care about perfect grammar. They care about connection. They smile when you try. They help when you're stuck. The world became his classroom. The city became his teacher. One day, he met a tourist looking for a hotel. The man asked, "Do you speak English?" For a second, the old fear returned, but then he nodded and said, "A little. I can help." And he did. He explained directions using simple words, gestures, and confidence. The tourist thanked him. And that one sentence, "I can help," echoed in his mind all night. Because it wasn't just a sentence. It was proof. He had grown. He started carrying a small notebook. But not for studying. It was for real-life English. Words he used, sentences he heard, things he wanted to say. He would note them down and shadow them later. Not because he had to, but because it felt real. Alive. His English was no longer something he practiced. It was something he lived. This chapter deeply touches the viewer's dreams. They want this too. To speak to someone, to ask for help, to travel without fear. And now, they believe it's possible. They realize they don't need to move to an English-speaking country to practice. They can start where they are, at a market, in a shop, at a bus stop. The spike moment arrives when the learner says, "I used English to help someone, and it made me feel proud." That's what every learner wants, not just to speak, but to feel good while speaking. Chapter 9. You don't need to study. You need to speak. He looked back at his journey, the grammar books, the vocabulary lists, the hours spent translating every word in his mind. And then he looked at where he was now, speaking in real situations, shadowing with joy, thinking in English without even trying. And he realized the truth, the final truth that changed everything. Fluency doesn't come from studying. It comes from speaking. He had wasted years trying to be perfect. He used to think, "I'll speak when I'm ready." But now he understood. Speaking makes you ready. The more you speak, the more your brain opens up. The more your mouth gets used to the rhythm, the more natural it feels. He remembered the fear he used to feel, the pressure, the shame. All of it melted away the moment he stopped focusing on being correct and started focusing on being clear. Now, English was no longer a subject. It was a tool, a friend, a bridge. He used it every day, not just to learn, but to live. And here's what shocked him most. He was speaking better now, without studying, than he ever did when he was stuck in grammar rules. Why? Because speaking is practice. And practice makes fluency. Not theory, not perfection. Just daily, emotional, fearless use. He no longer said, "I'm learning English." He said, "I speak English." Even if it wasn't perfect, even if it was simple, because the words were real, alive, his. He wanted every learner watching this to understand what took him years to discover. You don't need to study more. You need to speak more. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present. You don't need to remember rules. You need to repeat real sentences. Fluency is not in the book. It's in your voice. Use it. He ended the journey with a challenge. Not a grammar test, not a vocabulary quiz, a speaking challenge. Talk to yourself for 5 minutes a day. Mirror talk, shadowing, doesn't matter. Just speak every day for 7 days and see what happens. That was the trick. That was the method. That was the truth that finally made him free. The emotional peak here is powerful. The viewer feels it. They've been stuck too long, studying too long. Now they understand. It's time to speak. Not tomorrow. Not when they feel ready. Now, thank you for watching. If this video helped you, if it gave you even one moment of hope, then it's time to act. Don't go back to memorizing rules. Instead, pick one sentence and say it out loud right now. Subscribe to this channel because we don't just study English, we speak it. Like this video and comment below. Will you take the 7-day speaking challenge? Let's change the way we learn English together.